Welcome to the Ninon Speaks Internet TV show. Ninon is an international entrepreneur and philanthropist who's become an influential and positive role model for thousands of people all over the world. Drawing on a rich tapestry of experience from her adventures both in front of and behind the camera, Ninon captivates, entertains, and inspires audiences from all walks of life. Her motto is, "Nothing happens without you." Now, here's your host, Ninon de Verde Rosa.
Welcome to Ninon Speaks. I'm Ninon de Verde Rosa, your host for the next hour. We have an incredible guest, but I always say that we have an incredible guest because all guests are incredible. They all have a different story. They all have something very interesting to talk about. And today our subject is going to be about sex. Do we enjoy it? Can we enjoy it? We're going to find out exactly what we should and shouldn't be doing. And I didn't realize, my dear old ripe old age right now, that you had to really sort of, get into it the way you're supposed to or should, or whatever we're going to learn on this subject. Ninon Speaks Media Image is a platform where I give people the opportunity to actually explain who they are, what they do in this world, how they bring their talents to the forefront, which is, of course, is through Google+, which is also goes on to YouTube. So this is a great platform to be able to understand other people out there on what they have learned and what they have actually practiced for many, many years. Today we have Dr. Elsbeth Moit, and she's from Germany. Dr. Elsbeth, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ninon. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I just love the subject because this is a very tender subject for America. It seems to be a little easier, I feel, because obviously I'm from Europe and you are too, and it's a little different in America of how we perceive all this. But let's go into a little bit of your background. You're originally from Germany?
I am, yes. I came here when I was 29 years old and grew up there and got my education there, and then came here postgraduate work, actually in Boston, in Cambridge.
Oh, how wonderful. I know Boston very well. My late husband was actually from Boston, so it's one of my favorite cities. It's just amazing there. But you actually went to college in Germany, correct?
Yes, to the conservatory. I have an undergraduate and a graduate degree in music education, and then later on I got my doctorate here in the United States and went into management consulting. Very different from what I'm doing now.
We're going to get into the subject we're going to cover today. What did you think about the education in Germany and the education forum, or how we do our education in America?
Yeah, actually, the American system was very beneficial to me because I didn't complete high school. In Germany, you can go into the conservatory without a high school degree because you have to pass an entrance exam, and I was a violinist, and so I passed that. So for me to get a doctorate in Germany would have been very, very difficult.
Really?
However, once I completed, I mean, I could have done, but lots of hoops to jump through.
Would it take like sort of many years to do that?
Yeah, and then you have to make up for the high school work in order to get into undergraduate. However, here in the United States, they considered my undergraduate, what they then considered as an undergraduate and a graduate degree in music education that I got from the conservatory, that was in the American, and whatever they, understanding they have with each other, the two countries, they accepted that, and I sailed right into my doctoral work.
So why did you study music? Are you a singer, or did you play the piano, or where did that come in? Or where did it go out?
I started playing the violin. I started playing the violin when I was 7 years old, and I gave recitals when I was 9. So it was just something I really could do. However, then midstream in the conservatory, I shifted over to a different major, which is called eurythmics. It's not the band. There's a band that is called Eurythmics.
Yeah.
Eurythmics is a form of music education where you teach music through movement. And actually it comes in very handy now because we use music and rhythm and all of that in opening the body, in, you know, to connect more with our expressed artistic self, even when we are not artists.
Yeah, it's funny. This seems to be something that I've noticed that's sort of come into the last few years. We're now getting very in tuned with our actual body, whereas we never really did before. We just had a body, and whether it was fat, skinny, or whatever it was, none of us were really that concerned. And yet, the last sort of few years, it's sort of completely changed, and even now, it's even changing more. And I'm listening and watching. A lot of students, you know, they go to high school and then they go to college, and now they've got all these programs on how to teach you to talk and how to teach you to present yourself, and all these other realms are now coming out, and it seems like the education is coming out more now than it's ever been before in different forms.
Yes, yes. And as this applies to our education, what we want to, you know, go into further here, it's so much, how can we have sex without being in our body?
Well, I've never tried having it without being in my body. But now I'm like thinking to myself, you know, have I been missing something? I mean, I'm an older woman now, so have I been missing out after all these years? And I've now got to go and catch up. Could easily be done.
Yeah, but you know, Ninan, it's we are often in our head when we want to have sex, something like, you know, oh, am I going to be turned on, or, you know, for the men, am I going to be hard enough, and all of that, you know, can I perform? So it's like we are in our head, and through the practices we are teaching here at Tantra Nova, we actually bring drop out of our head into our heart, into our body, because that is where we have sensations and feelings and where we experience.
Yeah, I've never ever, I'm sort of thinking all about my sex life, and I've never really sort of felt that I've been in my head. I've never felt that I had to please the man, or I've never really done that. And I'm not saying being selfish or pleasing myself, but it was just like, seemed to be, for me, it seemed to be like a very natural thing between the two of us. So I don't know, and I noticed that you actually were a teacher, and did you teach this in school as well?
Yeah, actually I worked for a big music school in Boston, so it was not part of the school system, but we had a huge outreach program in the schools. So yes, I did teach in the schools. I taught at Berklee School of Music, and, you know, I mean, different levels, young ones, older college students.
Because we're having a big problem with, you know, and I was fascinated when I found out that you were actually teaching in schools, because we have such a large problem in schools where children, I'm still calling them children, I guess teenagers, think that they have to have this sex at such a young age, and then they get pregnant, and then they don't know, you know, what's going on, and they're becoming mothers before they're even, you know, had a life themselves. And did you teach them how to sort of cope with that, and because they had natural feelings?
Yeah, actually, I spoke about my music education when I was teaching there, but now we are not having it right now, but for the last few years, we had a program for teens, how to learn about their sexual energy.
Yeah.
Now you can imagine it's a sensitive, you know, a form of education, because there is not a lot of buy-in, or, you know, it's something you shouldn't be looking at or going there until you're married. And so it's, however, the kids who have come through our program, like 15 to 18-year-olds,
yes,
it's amazing.
So
you know,
do you think
you've helped them
in sort of curbing them a little bit on that they have to be careful of, you know, because I don't think at 16 or 17 they want to get pregnant, but at the same time, you know, sex is sex. I mean, it's a very beautiful, wonderful thing, and when you're in that moment, it's hard, I would imagine, the teenagers to stop.
Yeah, and you know what comes into play here is what we teach. We teach boys how they can become, and men too, not just boys, how they can become more aware of their sexual energy. They're in the tradition that we draw on, which one comes from East India and the other one comes from China. It's called the Tao of Sex from China and Tantra from East India. They both subscribe that we actually, and particularly the male, learns to move up his aroused energy from his sexual center into his heart center. So we teach, and there are very concrete practices, exercises where you know, a teenager or a man can learn how to use his pelvic floor muscles so that the reflex that produces the ejaculation doesn't go off. And while he does that, now it has to be practiced, you know, but while he does that, he breathes up that energy all the way through his body so that the intensity that really goes, you know, before the ejaculatory reflex happens, so that this dissipates a little bit and he can stay in this energy. So when Freddie Zental, my partner who works with the boys on that, when he teaches that then at first, you know, they are very awkward with it, and so then he gives him the homework. They come back the next day, and when they report back, they said, "Wow!"
And then, well, they're now looking at it as something completely different now, aren't they?
Totally
they're
different.
Now looking at it as completely something that is very beautiful and not just sex. Because a lot of them, I think, you know, they can't wait just to have the sex, which is because they're young. What is the difference between the young girls and women and the young boys and men? What is the difference?
Okay, so it has something to do with hormones. Like we call testosterone the quick hormone,
yes,
and estrogen the slow hormone. Yeah. So if we do a little graph here, I hope you can see this here. So if we look at masculine sexual energy rises quickly, gets easily excited and drops quickly, while feminine sexual energy rises slowly, hangs out there a little bit, you know. Yeah. If it's reawakened, it actually comes to a plateau, and it can stay on that plateau for a long time. You know, women can have multiple orgasms, and a number of women don't. So what we call it is reawakening the feminine energy, and for the male and the teenage boy to learn how he can sustain his energy.
So in other words, the boy, the male, has to take more control than the female.
Yeah,
otherwise
we call
it's all over.
Yeah.
Goodbye is all he wrote.
Exactly. And for his own sake, as well as also for the relationship and the partner's sake, yes. Because once his energy is gone, it's gone. He wants to have cookies and milk, you know. So and
that's certainly not what the woman wants. I mean, the woman still wants to continue. Does a woman want it to last longer than a man?
I don't think it has so much to do with wanting. It has something to do with once the energy is awakened, and given that we women don't have the refractory like males do, so we can it just keeps going. You know, I mean, it goes up and down, but there is not like that loss of energy. We don't feel depleted after.
No, a lot of, you know, we're having a lot of divorces in this day and age. And a lot of it, I truly believe, is to do with the sexual side of life. Because I think once that kind of dissipates and you both lose that feeling, for whatever reason or how you've lost it, how do we try to get that beautiful contact that they had at the very beginning, or the first year or the first 2 years, that they have this incredible sexual, beautiful being together, and then they lose it? Why and how?
Yes, so again, it has something to do with hormones. Hormones are very activated when we fall in love, when it's new. You know, it's like we don't have to work for it. It just happens. It's like,
Yes.
woo, you know. And then, however, over time, that not necessarily subsides all the way, but it gets less. So that is really where we want to learn how to create intimacy than just moving with it by default. Because when it goes by default, it comes and goes.
Well,
However,
there's no excitement anymore. There's nothing kind of left anymore. So, you know, it's like it's lost its beautiful zest. It's lost that sort of, you know, that chemistry has dissipated. And
yeah.
And we need to get that back again.
Exactly. And how can we do that? You know, some guys take Viagra. So it comes through drugs or chemistry. Where we come in is we learn practices that activate our energy through breathing, through awareness of the pelvic floor muscles, through channeling energy. You know, energy is very elusive because we cannot see it unless it shows up in light.
Elusive. But also, you know, like I'm going to go on a woman, see a woman now loses interest on her man or boyfriend, whatever the case may be, but she doesn't say that her sex things have kind of gone from him. But she could easily jump to another man and be completely in love again and have the whole sex thing going again.
Yeah, but it's the newness. So when you speak about so many divorces, I think what the opportunity is and challenge is to really have practices both for our sexual center and for how I look at it, also for the heart center and also for our consciousness center, you know, so that we are integrated. Because sex really cannot, if there's only the sexual attraction, it's not sustainable. I mean,
no, it's not. So you have to keep doing things to I hate to say keep it going, but that's actually what it is. But it's funny because I was married for 29 years and my husband and I did not have a problem. I have to think whether it was the same as when I first met him and got married, but it was roughly the same. I mean, we didn't really kind of have that problem. And now I'm wondering why we still actually had that attraction. And he definitely had the attraction. And that was
yes.
like, you know, that's pretty cool, I think.
It's very cool. And you are very blessed. You were very blessed with the man you had in your life. And that you must have had a polarity, you know, and it sounds like it was effortless.
It was totally, there was, that's what I laugh at. How do you plan sex? I have never planned sex in my life I mean, it happens. And, you know, and if I'm ready, I'm ready. If I'm not, I'm not. But with my husband, which was great, it was never that, we never had that problem. So this is why I'm asking you, there's so many problems with these couples or the married couples or singles that have so many problems. And I'm just thinking, why didn't I not have that problem? And it sounds like you don't have the problem, but then you've been practicing this.
I have been practicing this, yes. And I also think that you are the exception.
Okay.
I think for many couples it subsides and then they don't know how to reawaken it.
Yes.
And you know, that is really what, I mean, couples can learn that.
You've got to pull yourself back from the screen. I can't see your face.
Okay.
Pull yourself back the other way. Go backwards. Yeah. Yeah, you kind of got that. That's it. There you go. Now I can see you. There you are. You have an auto thing on your screen, that's why you're coming up close. But you look beautiful close anyway, so it's wonderful. But anyway, getting back so you wrote this book called Sexual Enlightenment, and what was your main purpose of this book, and why did you suddenly go into this realm of life? Was it because of your husband and yourself? And I believe your husband is Freddie Zentar Weaver. Is that correct?
Yes. So
yes.
Let me share a little bit about that, because I also lost my first husband in '96.
I'm sorry.
In 1996, and yeah, you know, I'm very complete with it. Freddie Zentar would not have shown up in my life. You know, sometimes life takes a very interesting, you know, whatever.
I agree with you 100%. I don't think you can predict life a lot. I think I feel that you must be very, very open in your life, and not to have this, not to be sort of feel embarrassed about sex or awkward about sex, because it's a very natural, normal thing to do, and a lot of people aren't quite like that. They don't think it like that. They get very embarrassed about it and having it and doing it. So you did not have that, though.
Now, when I grew up in a very in an environment when I was a child where I was very, and now my thing is I don't know what it is.
You've got it on automatic, and it's you've got to keep yourself very still. You can't move. You've got to go back. I don't know. You've got to go backwards. I haven't seen this before, but that's okay.
You can see my mouth.
You're coming back again. See, this is like having a sexual moment.
Really?
going in and out.
With what is?
You can get very explicit about this whole thing.
That is funny. That is funny. So anyway, when I was little, I do remember that we, as children, when it was really hot in the summers in Germany,
yes.
We just took our umbrellas and then walked butt naked around the neighborhood, and there was nothing strange about that.
What do you mean? You got an umbrella that you put over your head?
Yeah, so to cover ourselves up against the sun. But we were totally butt naked, you know, because it was so hot. So we walked around the neighborhood like that and had great fun. So,
but that's in France. In France, they don't have clothes on either, and it's no big deal.
Right. And however, that shifted when I hit puberty. You know, I got very interested in boys. My relationship with my dad changed, and you know, to the chagrin of my parents, I became curious about my sexual self. But anyway, I always was curious about sexuality and explored, and you know. And I learned about Tantra in my early 30s, but never started really delving into it until my late 40s. And then I was a management consultant.
How old were you when you first had sex?
I was 18 years old.
Really?
With my first boyfriend, yes. And I was really in love with him, and we had petted and, you know, explored for 2 years before we had sex. And then when we had sex, it was very painful. It was so painful that we had to stop. I had to go to the gynecologist, and the gynecologist took care of the hymen that hadn't opened up fully. And then the bill from the gynecologist went home to my house, and all hell broke loose. So that was not comfortable
for you. Wow.
Yes, I just felt very alone and misunderstood, and so that was how I, you know, had sex.
In those days, you think in those days that it was much different than what it is now. I don't think the younger generation get embarrassed anymore about what they do and how they do it, and probably half the parents don't even know what they're doing anyway. So I think it's more of a casual. Is sex more casual now?
I do believe that it has changed. Also, that teens and youth start earlier than when I came up. But I think I was just as out of the box for my parents around my sexual behavior as probably many kids are now out of the box for their parents.
Yes.
You know, so it goes by generation. You know, I just find that we don't really have much learning around our sexual self.
No.
Both sex education as well as also, you know, for girls, how they really listen to themselves, what they want. We call it listening to the heart, you know, for a woman or for a girl, and speaking from there, while boys really and men need to learn more about their sexual center and how to be with their sexual center, not to only be driven by their sexual center. Not that that is a bad thing, but if that is the only way how they can interact with it, it's very limited.
Well, yes, and this is obviously why you wrote this book, and you're saying, you know, create lasting fulfillment. Explain that a little bit of what is lasting fulfillment. How I'm going to go more on the younger generation, how they can sort of understand what sex really is and what it can be and what it cannot be.
Yes, yes. Now, also the emphasis on creating, because it's like when we grow up, or in our culture, you know, it's like Pretty Woman or
Yeah.
Snow White being awakened by the prince, or so we are waiting for this white knight as women. And you know, since the women's movement, it has been shifting, but there is like this residual dream of just being swept off our feet and falling in love.
Do you
And
think
that
women
is,
still want that? They still want to be swept off their feet and carried away? I know I still want that, because obviously I don't have my husband anymore. He passed away.
yes,
So
there is
for me,
still that. I do think there's still some of that desire, and to be, you know, when we are aware of it, we can be with it and work with it. But if we are lost in it, then we are expecting the other to do it for us, or to, you know, we are looking for love outside, missing that we are already love. So so we also look at partnership as something where both people bring themselves, not because we need each other, but we want to create together, we want to learn together.
so it's a little bit more than just the sex. Is it harder for an older woman, and I'm going to be talking probably after 50, 60 years old, that she now feels a little insecure about her body? And I think that makes a big difference of, you know, I think this is when a woman can actually turn around and say, you know, am I good enough? Do I look okay? And feels a little bit inhibited about that. Does she have to worry about that? Because a lot of the older men do go for the younger women.
Yeah, I'm not so sure what to say here, because let me speak about myself.
Yes.
Because, you know, I'm 64, so I'm not a spring chicken anymore. However, if it all depends on me feeling confident in myself and accepting what is. You know, I mean, I'm not 25 anymore. And I also have created a relationship where I feel safe, where I feel secure, where I trust my man, and we can be very open with each other. And that doesn't mean that he may not have a desire at a certain moment looking at a woman, you know, to just, you know, fantasize. But, you know, that doesn't mean that he runs away.
Is it okay for a man to fantasize when he looks at another woman, as long as he doesn't let his lady know he's doing that? Is that okay? Or is it okay for him to let her know that he does look at another woman? Because men can't help that. That's what men do.
It's okay with me. You know, I also know males are very much activated by the visual. So they just have to look at something and whoops, you know, it may come up. So so I don't take this like, oh my gosh, now he's leaving me, or I'm not good enough. I don't have these interpretations about myself. Now, if I sense that there may be something, then I just talk with him about it. I say, you know, darling, how do you feel about her? Or, you know, it's like I just felt it. We call it leaking energy, you know. So if there is something, or he notices this in me, you know, then we talk about it. And you know, we have trained ourselves not to leak energy, but that doesn't mean that that may not happen.
But we're all very, very normal, so it's very normal for a man, you know, to see us. I live in Vegas, so this is a very tricky place to live, because you've got all these very young ones, and they're anywhere, and I'll say from 18, I won't go younger than that, but they are much younger than that. But from 18, you know, 25, these beautiful, and they are beautiful. I mean,
yes.
I don't know if they've got much upstairs, but a man does not need that. So you've got a lot of these men here, and I think it's 5 women to every man here in Vegas. So you've got this tremendous amount of competition going on here. I don't feel that way, because I know what I want and where I'm going, so I'm not particularly bothered about that. But it's a hardship for women here, and I see it a lot, especially women probably from 40 to 60. It's a hard time for them.
Yeah, but I'd find it's only hard if we are not centered and grounded in ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, so for me, working with women, that is how I work with women. I also teach women's workshops where we have only women in it. And I really assist women to reconnect to their intimate essence, to their feminine self, and to listen to their heart with respect to what they want and who they are, and learning to speak, you know, to express, because often that got shut down when they were young. So I'm very much for women empowerment and for co-creating with her men. And,
Yeah.
you know, also being vigilant and not selling out.
And I think you're right when you say selling out. I think you have a good point. I think a lot of women that I see and I meet underestimate themselves. They sort of feel just because they are older that, you know, no one likes them or no one wants them. But there's a lot of men out there that don't really want these young women. They would like somebody around their own age and everything. And I think sometimes we put ourselves in the way.
Yes. You know, then I would say, I mean, if a man needs to learn to distinguish between sex and love. A woman, of course, needs to do that too. And if a man is continually attracted to, you know, having to express his sexual self, then I just would say, you know, it may be time for you to grow up.
Yeah. How do we get a man to sort of try to understand the difference between sex and love? Love, you can love forever. Sex can last 5 minutes, 5 hours, whatever. But it's not always about sex, but it is about the compatibility of two people being in love and, you know, doing the normal things that people in love do. How do we change? Because they do think differently than us. How can we sort of understand them more?
Yeah. So you know what? Not often, but at times happens when couples come to us, is that, you know, they both come, they both want to learn, they both want to be intimate together. However, what the woman may say initially when, you know, they show up is like, you know, I want to make love to him as well, but can't you kiss me first? You know, so that got lost, that connection from the heart. And women, when they want to connect, they start feeling in their heart center. When men want to connect, they start feeling it in their sexual center. So in the tantric practice, what I learn is to breathe up that aroused, wonderful energy up into the heart center, and then they connect from their heart center. It's like a channel, you know, to the woman's heart center. When a woman's heart center opens, her sexual center opens. We call it the yoni. Yoni means sacred space. Her sacred space opens. And then we have a circuit from his heart to her yoni, to her sexual center, and back to his sexual center. So it's really like a circuit that is being established. And that is where a woman feels being gotten. When she feels being gotten and listened to, she opens up. She wants to express herself. She feels pleasure. But that often gets lost. You know, we said earlier, where did it all go? It was so great the first couple of years.
Yeah, it gets lost an awful lot, and I'm trying to get in here, which I think I've learned a lot, is to try to get a kind of a happy medium on both sides. You just came to a great point, which happens, I would imagine, I don't know, but assuming this happens because there's so many divorces and things, that the man wants sex, and the woman actually wants to sort of, you know, caress a little bit and kiss and sort of have that sort of romantic side of guiding into having sex before just having sex. And I think a woman feels, I'm not all women, but I think a woman feels that she's being used if she just have the sex and no sort of, you know, building up to having sex.
Yeah, and many women take more time also. You know, they may not go so fast, be not as easily aroused. So really, it takes like that dance together to, you know, to come together and to feel together. I do believe that men actually also want to be intimate. However, you know, also if when we have been together for a number of years, often what has built up is like these hidden resentments. You know, we were
Yeah,
fighting, something didn't get
yeah.
resolved, you know, so it's like in the background there is some anger or some resentment. It may not be obvious, but underneath.
And it might
And
not have
so,
anything to, it might not have anything to do with sex. It could have nothing to do with sex, but it could be something that's there. So you're advising them to really to sit down and communicate with each other and to talk with each other and not sort of, you know, hang on to these crazy, stupid things that create a
right,
divorce.
exactly. And sometimes in clearing that, the heart opens again to each other.
Yeah.
And that is, you know, then they want to come together again. So we do emotional practices, communication practices, and then really teach them very concrete practices around their sexual energy. For the man to sustain and move up his energy into his heart, for the woman to open up, learning to trust again and to let the energy flow. But the man needs to be present for her in order for her to open up.
Do you think that the woman should be a little bit more patient and a little bit more humble to try to guide him back into where they were before?
Oh, it has a lot to do with her as well. So, for example, when we teach the man how to channel his energy, we teach
Hmm.
the woman how she can support him in
Yes.
assisting him in channeling his energy, where it's not about her, where she actually gets the opportunity to step more into his world and to really be there for him, which often opens up the space for the guy to, oh wow, you know, I can be in my prowess, I can be feeling, and she's
And
right
she
there
really
for
does,
me.
and she loves me.
Right, exactly. And she wants to be there, and she holds space for me, you know, doesn't have any expectations. So there, in these practices, we have one for the man and one for the woman. There's a clear role division. One is the giver and one is the receiver, and we maintain these roles throughout these particular practices. It's not tantric lovemaking, but it's to learn something about each other and oneself.
Communication. It's like a communication with each other. But do you think that the problem that we've been having with these divorces and the sex thing is because women have become so much more, especially in America, so much more independent, so much more relying on themselves, so much more of actually sort of not even living with the man or a husband anymore.
Yeah,
She's like the sole
yeah.
person bringing the children up, and now she's got 2 kids and she's got jobs and she's got this and she's got no time for sex.
Yes, yeah. That's really great that you bring this up because something has shifted over the last 50 years,
Hmm.
primarily over the last 50 years. And it has something to do with, you know, being or not being in the balance of our feminine or masculine. In the Chinese traditions, they call it yin and yang. And
Yes.
again, it has something to do with the balance of testosterone and estrogen. And for many women, including myself, you know, we have developed over the last few decades our masculine side. If we want to participate in the marketplace, we need to have masculine skills, so-called masculine skills.
Yes.
And we have forgotten about our feminine. And again, it's so if we want to have that polarity of the feminine and masculine dance in lovemaking, the capacity to drop into our feminine self, opening up, receiving, and letting go, because orgasm is a
Yeah.
function
Yeah, and
of
I've noticed
letting
a lot
go.
of yeah, and a lot of women throw out the word, "Oh, he just wants me for sex." I mean, if I feel that if you put that into the man's mind, or if you put that into your own body, you're actually putting out what you're feeling, and you're never going to get anywhere that way. You're never going to have the fulfillment of having that beautiful love relationship and those beautiful sex moments and the beautiful being together and doing whatever
Yeah.
you both feel like doing. You're never going to get there if you're going to all just say, well, he just wants me for my sex. You're already putting like a wall there already.
Yeah, so I actually attribute quite a bit of power to the woman also in sexual terms, because we are the seductress, and I'm saying this, you know, with a great honoring, not using in a sense of
Yes.
using, but really because that is, you know, our feminine energy is what's so appealing to the male. So to be conscious about that and using that wisely, we can invite the male to listen.
Yes.
We can invite to letting him know what we want. Of course, he needs to be willing, but in the inviting, he may become very willing.
Well, I'm
So
sure
perhaps it's
I'm sure, I'm quite sure he would. But it's like, you know, the woman, it's up to the woman whether they're going to have sex or not. Because the woman will say, if she doesn't want to have sex, believe me, you don't have sex. Unless he's going to rape her.
yes, but you know, I think if both people want to be together,
Yeah.
they want to create their life together. They want to enjoy each other. And however that sex looks, you know, if it's intercourse or not, but there are so many ways of being together, enjoying and being affectionate and intimate and loving and kissing and whoo. So it's just
And I think dropping a little bit of the judgment on people. I mean, I was fortunate. I truly believe now from you, I had a very blessed marriage, but there was a lot of things that I would let go of because they really didn't matter. I could have made something of them, but they really didn't matter. And I'm the type of person anyway that sort of, you know, it's okay, we're all different. Just because you don't get on with somebody doesn't mean to say that they're a bad person or they're hateful or they're no good or this. It's just that you personally don't get on with them. But we had, I've definitely had an understanding, and I think it was a lot of giving on his side as well as a lot of giving on my side. And I think that's what's going wrong at the moment, that they're sort of picking on so much stuff that's really not necessary.
yeah, you seem like a very wise woman. And you seem to have having had a mature relationship with your husband, because it's just what you said, that letting go of the little annoyances or of, you know, making the other wrong, which once we go down the garden path, forget it, it's gone. So to let go and dance the dance, you know.
Yeah.
And yes, perhaps sometimes he may step on your foot or you may step on his foot, but do we dwell on it?
No.
Or do we just pull the foot aside and then keep moving, keep
moving? And I think that's what I would like, the message I would like to get over, and I think this message you also have, you know, researched this for so long of how to sort of, you know, stay together, have a beautiful relationship. I mean, yeah, there are some relationships that just shouldn't be together and maybe they married for the wrong reasons.
Yes.
I can't judge that, but I can judge that. Try to, if you've got that feeling and you've got that, there's a couple in town here that I know, and this girl was very much of divorcing her husband. And I said to her, I said, don't go down that road. I said, don't do that. I said, try to work this out. And she said, well, I can't stand it, blah, blah, blah. And he was kind of looking after the children and she was working. And I said, no, I said, you know, try to praise him, try to help him. And truly, they're still together. They hung up and they got over. And I think if a man and a woman can get over that hurdle, that point, there's always a point where you have to get over and to drop it and to see what you've got. I mean, who wants to be a woman out there working, taking care of everything, children and everything, without a man? It's very, very hard.
Yeah, and letting go and trusting and opening up is challenges. There's no question. But I think it's doable if we apply ourselves.
Yes.
Nina, may I share a little bit about the book? And
I would love you to share a whole lot about the book. Yes, absolutely. Why did you write the book?
Why?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you know, it's really an outgrowth of our work that we do at Nova, our institute here in Chicago, and we teach workshops both here and at the East Coast and the West Coast and Australia, and we just wanted to share this message to a much bigger audience than people who can come here. And with a book you can do that. It's called Sexual Enlightenment: How to Create Lasting Fulfillment in Life, Love and Intimacy. It's available on our website, tantranova.com, TANTRANOVA, the new Tantra, tantranova.com. And there are also other things. There is a gift for your audience. It's called 10 Practices, how to create intimacy and love. And if they opt in there on the home page, they can download it right away. And we have also a home study course, both in hard copy and download. So there are lots of resources to start learning about what we are talking about here.
Yes. What are some of your 10 ways of sort of, coping with this?
Yeah, when you spoke about letting the upsets go and keep dancing in the relationship, we have a great practice for that, which is the belly breathing practice, where we breathe into our belly. By breathing into our belly, we activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the feel-good nervous system, so it calms us down, it makes us peaceful, instead of being irritated and want to fight back. So this is a wonderful practice of coming to stillness. And we can apply the breath then in partner practices, where we touch each other's heart. So I touch Freddie Cental's heart with my right hand, and he touches my heart with his right hand. And then we breathe in and out together.
So you're actually touching it, you actually got your hand on his chest, on his heart.
Exactly, exactly.
So you're definitely you're having a great communication there.
Yeah, and when we breathe in and out together, we come into attunement. We come into the same rhythm. We drop out of our thinking mind, out of the chatter mind that may, have been a little angry right before. We drop into the heart center, breathe in and out together, and it's like a wave. We come and go together, and it's a beautiful way.
It's like a communication. It's like getting back in a communication with your, I always call them the better half. So
Exactly.
You're having to understanding and forgetting whatever the argument was or whatever happened, and coming back as one. Because when you get married or when you're together, you are like one. You're working together. You're doing everything together.
Yes. Yeah, Freddie always says it's not just 13 years that we have been together. It's when you work together and live together and do everything together, teach together, it's like 26 years,
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Now, where can they, can you give me your website again so that I know where they can get your book?
Yes. Tantranova.com, TANTRANOVA.com.
Okay, wonderful. Now, can they call you at all?
They can at 773-525-5006. Again, that's 773-525-5006.
Wonderful. Now, I want to ask you a couple more questions, and one is, for our audience out there, since this is what I try to do so that they can gain something out of what we're talking about, which is having sex, which is a sex relationship with your husband, boyfriend, whatever the situation may be. What is the best advice you would give somebody that is having a little bit of a problem, that they're sort of not communicating sexually, and they're kind of, and they really don't want to lose each other? They want to stay together, but if they're not having sex, I guarantee it's going to part.
What I recommend actually is that they get the book, and in the book, at the end of the book, there are practices, both written out, and it also comes with an audio download. And so they can start practice the connection that we just talked about. They get guided in it, because in the beginning you really need guidance. Otherwise, how do you breathe together? What? Looking into his eyes, if they are, a little bit estranged, that all has to be reawakened, reintroduced.
Reconnecting again, reconnecting your soul back into your better half.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And these practices are simple yet profound. So that is what I recommend. Now, if Do you have a question for singles? Because singles are often concerned
I
with the
do.
same.
I have a big
Not the
question
same.
for single women. There's although we have in Vegas we have 5 women to sort of 1 man. How I don't know what the count is, but whatever it is. But women, men seem to be okay with each other. They seem to get on okay. Women have this battle of you know, if they find a boyfriend, last thing they ever do is introduce him to their girlfriends. That never comes in because of their feeling insecure as of losing him. Why?
So, that leads me back again to reconnecting with my feminine self. And I like to call it the feminine essence. What I mean by it is her power. But power is so preoccupied with the masculine. This is why I call it the feminine essence. It's like being grounded in myself, being confident in myself, and to look at what keeps me from that. Now, there may be an old story, the way I was brought up. You know, I felt dominated by my dad, or watched my mother being dominated by my dad, or whatever it may have been. And that story still lives in me, and not like here out front, but like as a background, like the monkey on the shoulder. You know,
Yeah.
so to look at what stories actually run in the background that determine how I feel, what actions I take. So it's really the time now for women, we call it the rising of the feminine, to come fully into themselves, not to overpower the men, but to be in her power so that she can dance, you know, like we call it the horizontal relationship, not the hierarchical relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So that we really can listen, giving, receiving, being heard, speaking up, you know, not, again, not selling out, but also not pushing him around either, or making him wrong all the time.
Now, what about a lot of the younger generations, and I'm going to be talking about kids from 14 to 18, a lot of them now it's very common for them to have sex. And a lot of them, you know, obviously it's something very brand new for them, and you know, all their hormones are running around, and his are running around, and hers are running around.
Yes.
But they have to be very careful, and I'm sure that at the time when they're sort of getting aroused, both of them, they have to be very careful of getting pregnant, because you know, to have a child between 14 and 18 is not a good thing to happen. What advice would you give them? Because how can they? They're very young. They don't know how to stop or when to stop because they just want to continue. What do they do?
Yes. Yeah, so when I work with teenage girls, then what I guide them in is listen to their heart. Because some girls, they have sex not because they really want it, but because other girls may do it or that they fit in. There's a practice I do with teenage girls, a literal practice where I guide them into listen to their heart center, like really feeling into themselves what they want and what they don't want. When girls are given that space, they drop easily into that space, and then give them also the space to ask for what they want. So that's one essential thing. The other thing, which is also essential, is to have girls listen to themselves with respect to what they need, because often girls have sex in order to feel loved. It's not really for the sex. It's just because, you know, looking for love outside, and when they have sex, they feel like, oh, then I'm accepted, which is total, you know, nonsense, because the boy doesn't love her more or less. He may come back for more because it feels so good.
Yes.
It has very little to do with love. So the distinction, now that really has to be worked on, because again, that is what we learn when we are kids, you know. When I'm behaving nicely, when my dad gives me attention, then it feels like I'm loved. When he doesn't give me attention, then I feel I'm not loved. And of course, you know this probably from yourself, it's something that we mature into when we grow up, that love doesn't really live outside, it lives in here. It lives in here. So, you know, but that it's really what's required is training for girls.
For girls, yeah, and I think they need, you know, and you're absolutely right. I think they feel they have to have the sex because then they're loved and they're giving love to the guy, and now the guy's going to love them.
Yes.
But if the guy loves them, he will not have sex. If he really loves
Yes.
her, he will not have sex
Yeah.
because he will have
Yeah.
respect for her and he will love her and he will love her without the sex. So, you know, the sex thing is there's nothing wrong with sex. I mean, it's a wonderful thing, and I think sometimes your women think that they have to do it, and it's not so. Correct? I think we've lost her. We've lost her. Well, anyway, that is actually, I think we've lost the doctor, but at the meantime, that is the end of the show anyway. We've come to an end. We had come to the end of Ninon Speaks Media Image. We had a fantastic show talking all about sex. What is sex? Why is sex? Why do we like it so much? I could give a lot of answers to that. But anyway, I've had an incredible career and I had a great husband, so I have absolutely 100% no complaints. But I do say to the younger generation, especially to the ladies out there, to be very, very careful. Men don't have to worry as much because men don't get pregnant. Women get pregnant and then they have to take care of the child or have an abortion, which is obviously we're all against abortions. So I think out there, definitely the younger generation, be very careful because you can be loved, very loved, without even having sex. Thank you to my audience out there for watching Ninon Speaks Media Image, and to my guest, who was amazing, talking all about sex, what it is, why it is, and how it is. I will see you next week. I'm looking forward to the next week's show. Thank you for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.